It's 1973. George Sharman is 22 years old, sitting alone on top of his Volkswagen van in the middle of a Montana wheat field. And he has an epiphany. In that moment, what he decides to do has the potential to change the world for the better.
And I said to myself, I'm going to solve this gas problem. This is nuts that we want to drive 55 and we can only buy gas every other day. I'm going to do a gas efficient vehicle. A little over 500 people showed up. It was great. Had barbecued 2 whole cows. We had 6 kegs of beer and a case of every kind of whiskey. Had a 10-piece band and t-shirts for everyone.
So as a 25-year-old kid, you're meeting with the top executives of some of the largest car companies in the world.
I did meet with the vice president of Chevrolet. He flat out called me a liar when I said my car weighed only 1,800 pounds. He said, that's impossible. And they liked it too. I think that the poor ignorant country boy doesn't know he can't do this. So sometimes when you don't know you can't do it, you can. Don't be afraid of what other people tell you. Of course, my father thought I was insane. I accomplished what I originally started out. I'm not Henry Ford, don't claim to be, but I set out to build an efficient vehicle, and I did. Anytime you can haul 4 people in a safe vehicle and get 80 miles a gallon back in the 70s, I think that's a great accomplishment.
So somebody watching this inspired by this crazy old country boy's idea and his actions, and they think, that all makes sense. I think I might try to see what I can do. What would you say to them?
Tell them it's too late. There's another option.
What are the lessons learned, do you think?
I say follow your dreams, no matter what, whether you win or lose. You still have to try. When you have an idea that you really believe in, give it all you got till you don't got.
This is a story of perseverance, of following through on one's dream, and of a vision for the future. This is truly an American story, and it is George's story.
Give it all you got. If it works, great. If it doesn't, then you wait for some other opportunity. You never know what the day may bring. And I'm the luckiest man in the world. Car or no car.
Where did this idea come from?
You want the whole story? I graduated from A&M in construction and started my own construction business in 1970. And by 73, I was only 22 years old and had 20 people working for me, and I said, I'm not doing this anymore. And I decided to take a road trip to find out what I really wanted to do. It was gas every other day. Well, I got stuck in Denver and had to spend the night in Motel 6 because I couldn't buy gas to keep going. Moving on, I drove all the way north in my Volkswagen bus that I'd outfitted to be a camper. And by the time I hit Montana, I'd stopped and was sitting on the top of the roof at a roll-open roof by myself and watched the moon come up. And I said to myself, I'm going to solve this gas problem. This is nuts that we want to drive 55 and we can only buy gas every other day. I'm going to do a gas efficient vehicle. And got in the car, and it took me only 2 days to get back to Texas. And it had taken a week to get where I was. And I had connections at Southwest Research Foundation, so I went to them and also met a person there that was running their physics department, and he designed and made my entire dashboard for me, which was all electronic. And it controlled oil pressure, fuel, speed, everything was digital. So I started having good luck there, and I found a company called Winter Plastics that made fiberglass boats in New Jersey. And went to New Jersey to make the plastic forms and parts, and they went bankrupt while I was there. I had to rent my own warehouse and hired a couple of their people. and finished it up there. And then we had it finished by July 4th of 1976.
So what was the whole period of time that it took?
We started in the latter part of 1973. It took a little, about 3.5 years to do it. Took over a year to do the model, what we formed the molds off of. Went to New Jersey the following September and came back in June. Anyway, we built this car, built the model, came back, had the party here at Mansfield Park, and a little over 500 people showed up. It was great. Had barbecued 2 whole cows. We had 6 kegs of beer and a case of every kind of whiskey. Had a 10-piece band and T-shirts for everyone.
But but this was with no experience in the automotive industry. I mean, you were a contractor.
Right. Well, I knew how to build things, and that's what helped me there. And I knew how to draw. Mechanical drawing, not artistic drawing, but mechanical drawing. So I did all the drawing for the car once it was being made. We put it together, but it was all plastic. I had 2 little steel frames to hold the wheels and mount the engine on, and that's it. And they were molded, shaped to fit into the plastic so that the strength was obtained from the shape of the plastic, not necessarily the thickness.
So how crazy did everybody think you were when you got back from Montana?
Well, it was New Jersey. Oh, from up there?
Yeah, when you first got the
Well, I was
vision.
talking to engineering people, so they loved it. That's why they were willing to help me do it, because they saw the problem too. I mean, average fuel back then was about 24 miles a gallon, except in a really small car like a Volkswagen, you might get 40. But I went under my awakening up there in Montana actually it was a wheat field, was back to Einstein. It's real simple. Energy equals mc squared. Well, C is a coefficient of all kinds of different things. But M is mass. It's real simple. The weight of the vehicle. Well, cut that in half and you just saved half the energy. If you cut it 3/4, you'll save 3/4 of the energy. And I'd already done the study where the average weight of everybody in a car is 175 pounds. And the average weight of the car was over 3,500 pounds. So that's 5% of the weight. And 95% is the energy's moving the vehicle instead of the person. The whole goal was moving the person, but you're moving the weight. You're 95% is just moving the vehicle. I said, we can change that. And that was what started me in this direction. Improve everything. Aerodynamics, weight, and the best engine. Put it together, and you're going to have... I didn't know what mileage we'd get till we got it done and tested it. But we got 80 miles to the gallon tested in an official capacity at Southwest Research. They were right on the money. They couldn't even believe the numbers either. How can you get 80 miles to the gallon on a car this big? Well, we did. However, I spent another year or 2 doing research and putting it all together, because I called it an energy efficient vehicle, EEV, even though the name of our company was the Great American Car Company. But I went to several banking companies in New York City, Dallas. I had a meeting with the board of directors of Exxon Mobil, and that was the most interesting meeting because I gave a 30-minute presentation to them, and they asked me to leave the room. And I came back about 20 minutes later after they talked about it, and they congratulated me on what a great job I've done, this, that, and the other. But they said, our stockholders own stock in General Motors and U.S. Steel, and it would really upset our stockholders if we invested in something that would completely negate their work, so to speak, because we're building plastics. And my only answer back to him was, sir, thank you for your time, but there will come a day when I can afford to buy your oil and gas and make something out of it rather than just burn it up. And that's what made me keep going. being told no. I couldn't find anybody to back me to produce more cars. I had one, but that's all I could afford to do, and I was absolutely broke by then.
And you funded this all yourself?
I funded 125,000 of it, and I sold stock for 125,000. I had $250,000, but the vice president of Dow Chemical came down from Michigan and drove the car in the parking lot at their plant in Port Arthur, and he was astounded that you could build a prototype car for $250,000. No one would ever do mine because they didn't like what could be done with plastics. You think of plastics that they break. All our stealth bombers are made out of plastic now, by the way. And the upgrades in the plastic and the reinforcement they put in it, Kevlar, for instance, they use that for reinforcing in the plastic. These things are almost indestructible. They'll stop a bullet. But that's the future, in my opinion, but no one's done it. It's been 50 years.
Why haven't?
I don't know. Well, they're stuck in what they're doing. Everybody's used to metal, and it's really got all the machinery to do metal cars, and stamping plants, etc. And that's what's happening.
Well, we've all heard that term, and it sounds like you got to live it. Planned obsolescence.
Oh, they do that too, but that's in their parts and components that they're meant to break, because they don't want you to sell you new ones. That was another problem with the plastic car. You could take a hammer, a 20-ounce hammer, and hit it as hard as you could, and it didn't do anything. It didn't even dent it. It didn't do a thing. And yet it's real easy to repair because it's fiberglass. You can, Bondo is plastic. It worked perfect. So they didn't like the idea that it would last forever. I mean, still have the car. It doesn't have a bit of rust in it, and it's 50 years old. You tell me. There's a lot of problems with existing businesses. They don't like change.
So if you had to pick between one or the other, they don't like change, it's just the way they've been doing it, versus they want to keep anything that can be that long lasting out of the market.
Well, twofold also. I mean, the investment they have in the equipment they have, the stamping plants, those are very expensive, giant machines that cost a fortune. And they're used to how they build the models and the molds, how that's done. They know how to do that, and all their equipment's set up to do that. I mean, be totally revamping entire assembly situations. I mean, my car only had 12 pieces in it. A regular metal car has 180 pieces of metal in it alone. My car only has 11 or 12 main panels. You put them together and you glue them together. Done.
25-year-old kid, you're meeting with the top executives of some of the largest car companies in the world.
I did meet with the vice president of Chevrolet. He flat out called me a liar when I said my car weighed only 1,800 pounds. He said, that's impossible. I said, here's the scale, here's the certification of it. They didn't believe it. And that was because, you remember at the time, this is when DeLorean, who had been head of Chevrolet, had quit and started his own car company. Unfortunately, his car is built out of aluminum. He was trying to do the same thing in terms of lowering the mass. But stamping aluminum, I went to some of the shops that he had it done at there in Detroit, and they were all saying, man, it takes 5 stamps to get one good piece because it wrinkles and you can't get it out. He said it was a terrible idea. And I too looked at batteries to run the car too. But we added up the weight and we said, we're back to store one. We're moving the batteries, not the people. I mean, it doesn't work. I mean, I did extensive analysis of all that. And now they're doing it today. That's the big step today, is electric vehicles. But batteries is not the answer. Even though batteries today are a lot better than they were then, they still weigh a ton. And it's weight we're looking at.
So even the electric vehicles, which address the fuel source issue, have not addressed the weight issue.
Correct. They made it worse because they weigh a ton, batteries do. Those metals like cobalt and lithium, those are considered heavy metals, heavier than lead. That's why they're so unique. Those are unique metals that have specific properties, but they're very dense and rare, very rare. And back to electricity, I mean, where do you think electricity comes from? Mostly from fossil fuels. I mean, it'd be great if we could do nuclear, but we haven't built a nuclear reactor in 20, 30 years. I don't know why they quit doing that either.
Aren't fossil fuels the source for plastics?
Yes, they are. They sure are. But it'd be better to make something out of it than just burn it up. Once it's burned, now it's pollution.
Your plastic vehicle required what we would call gasoline, right?
Yes, a combustion engine I had in it. I picked the best one it made at the time, which at that time I thought was the Honda Civic CVC engine, where they had double valves and reburned all the exhaust, burned it twice. And it had very low emissions and pretty good gas mileage. So that's what I used. Plus, I wanted a transverse engine. I didn't want to lose power in changing the drive shaft in a 90-degree deal. Every time you do that, that's a big loss of energy too. I turned the engine sideways in direct drive. Boom. Everything I could, I tried to save on energy. That was the whole concept. Energy efficient vehicle. Lower the weight, improve the dynamics, improve also the crash resistance, and use the best propulsion system available. Done.
You were talking earlier about the undercarriage.
Yes, well, that's part of the aerodynamics. It's not just the airflow over the car; it's the airflow under the car too. And that at A&M when they did the tunnel test, they said that's what the best thing you've done is clean up the bottom of the car, because that's where a lot of the drag was. Because again, that's the heavy air that we were talking about, and you deep reach into that air. It's twice the drag as the air above it.
Yeah, explain that again.
Well, the first 5 or 6 inches of air on the ground is 3 times the density of the next 20, 30 feet. The higher you go up, the less dense the air is. Obviously, when you get up about 30,000 feet, there's hardly any air, there's no density at all. That's why jets prefer to fly at that, because there's not much drag. Well, that first 4 or 5 inches, though, is like soup. It's almost like water. It just moves around as things go through it. That's why your tires actually cause a lot of drag, because they're going through that heavy air at the bottom. There's a lot to it that meets the eye out there. But I thought that was the best way to build a car at that time.
So you have your meetings with all these mucky mucks, and you come back with their input. What was your feeling at that time?
Well, I was going to take my design to Japan. I thought they might be. Nobody here was interested. I tried to talk to Ford and Chevrolet, neither one of them were interested at all. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go to Japan, because they were just entering the market. Honda and Toyota had a Corolla here, but other than that, hardly anybody else was, other than your real expensive sports cars from Mercedes and BMW, and every now and then a Maserati or a Jaguar. But who controlled the market? General Motors and Ford and Chrysler had 70% of the market. Japan only had about 6 or 7%. However, as we predicted in our book, they would hit 40% within 20 years. They call us all fools for saying that. But they did. They hit 42% to be exact. But that's who I was going to go to and try to sell it to the Japanese. I'm glad it didn't. I'd hate to give away American technology.
And that was the reason you didn't do it?
No, I didn't have any money. I didn't have enough money to go to Japan. So I had to go get a job. And as a matter of fact, when I made a commitment to stop doing the car, and I had to realize I had to go feed myself, the governor of North Carolina called me and said, hey, would you be interested in coming up here and sitting down and talking to us about an economic development? I said, no, sir. I've already made up my mind that I'm not doing this anymore. And that was the last I ever spoke to anyone about this car. And that was back in 1978.
So at that moment in 1978, how'd you feel?
I went and got a job as a carpenter. I said, I'm going to go do something I know how to do. I know how to build things. And I got a job working for a friend of mine in Houston, $10 an hour as a carpenter and superintendent, everything, until I had a little money and built my own company. And then stayed in the construction business until I was doing several $1 million a year, and then said no more. I'm moving to the country and living the life I want. And here I'm in Bandera, Texas, where I grew up as a little boy. And I'm the luckiest man in the world. Car or no car.
You built a full-scale model?
Yes, absolutely. It drives. We drove it. We tested it. I've had several people drive it.
What sitting here today, and you look back at that entire experience, what are the lessons learned, do you think?
I say follow your dreams, no matter what, whether you win or lose. You still have to try. When you have an idea that you really believe in, give it all you got till you don't got. And I felt like I did that. I went as far as I could. And I built the model. I felt very satisfied that I accomplished what I originally started out. I'm not Henry Ford, don't claim to be, but I set out to build an efficient vehicle, and I did. Anytime you can haul 4 people in a safe vehicle and get 80 miles a gallon back in the 70s, I think that's a great accomplishment. So I felt real good about that. I didn't have a problem, and I didn't have a problem becoming a carpenter, general contractor either. I mean, that's what I was trained to do. And it was a God-given talent. Why not do that? And I've had great success at it and got to do many wonderful jobs in Houston, beautiful homes, big warehouses, all kind of shopping centers. I mean, can't complain.
So your life motto, in a sense, could almost be play the cards you're dealt.
Oh, absolutely. And sometimes you get dealt some aces, so be sure you play them correctly. I didn't get all aces, but I got some. I was given some money. I had enough money to stop working and put all my efforts into this one thing, because I earned nothing for 3 years. I had nothing. But I lived very frugally and worked all the time. So.
And you followed your dreams.
Absolutely. I mean, that's all I thought about. I'd sit and thinking about it, and sit in a chair and think about the dashboard. What do I want on my dash? What do I want to have here? What am I interested in looking at? And when I get on speed, I want them to start blinking at me if it starts getting too high. I want fail safes, even on tire pressure, which everyone has that today, but 50 years ago, no one even thought of those kind of things. Where you could have an upper and lower limit on your oil pressures or temperatures, and we can make it blink at you if it went above or below what it was supposed to be. All these things were fun. I got to work with such talented people. The guy that designed that dashboard for me he built it himself with transistors and everything. This guy was a genius. He worked at Southwest Research. They were very helpful to me and gave me everything. Dow Chemical gave me all access to their engineers, their materials, come talk to them anytime I wanted to. They would do testing on certain products for me. I mean, they would not give me money, but we can't do that because we did it with General Motors and our stockholders had a fit. But they gave me access to all their intelligence, all their people, their engineers. Anyway, it was a long, fun trip. Met wonderful people on the way. People that ran Pittsburgh Plate Glass Company, a lot of the big molding companies in Detroit and the surrounding areas. The manager, head of the Winter Manufacturing, he became my consultant in terms of plastics. Mainly because it was an exciting idea for everybody that's mechanically oriented or in that business. They said, "Man, this is a great idea. Let's help them," and they liked it too. I think that the poor ignorant country boy doesn't know he can't do this. So sometimes when you don't know you can't do it, you can. Don't be afraid of what other people tell you. Of course, my father thought I was insane, but that's the way it goes.
But was your father at the party?
No, he was not.
Oh.
All my brothers and sisters were. Of course, 2 or 3 of them had invested, so they had to. But no, he didn't come. But
Why hasn't that idea been done in the last 50 years?
I think everybody's just too set in their ways. I mean, they think the biggest thing now is a battery-driven car. I mean, well, we knew about that 50 years ago too. We decided that wasn't the right way to go. They've been trying to lower the weight, but you have to be careful. The thinner you make metal, the less it weighs, of course, but also the less strength you have. But the way we design the car and with different kind of materials, we can do crash resistance and crash absorption 10 times better than metal. Metal's the only design criteria for that, and absorption is for it to crumple. It absorbs energy as it crumples. Well, that's not all that great when you make it so thin it weighs less. So, I mean, there's only so far they can go with metal to save on the mass without endangering you in terms of your crash resistance. And that was the other thing about the plastic. We had the hard skin, but with 18 inches of foam, a much denser, less dense plastic. In fact, foam is still plastic in the front end. And now with airbags, our car would have been virtually indestructible. I mean, we didn't have airbags back then, but we still felt we could absorb the energy with the type of reinforced, because the nose was 18 inches of foam with a 6-inch rubber on the front of that. The absorption is amazing what it can do. As I saw the test results myself, which they would not let me have access, take that book out of their plant. Now, I wasn't supposed to see it anyway, but they had kept it because they built this X19 with Chevrolet, and Chevrolet threw it away and hid it. They didn't. And they let me see it, but that's all they would do. But I said, I get the picture. I know what to do. Thank you very much. But anyway, that's why they don't switch. There's too much money invested in the steel plants that we have. Everybody's trained to do it that way. All the backup equipment for forming metal parts is that way. Everything's set that way. It'd be drastically hard to switch over to plastic. They don't form that all the same. You don't mash plastic. You pour it into a mold and heat it and pressure it, and then they make a piece. That's how you make a piece. It's totally different than metal.
And if the dream now are these electric vehicles, which addresses the fuel source, we're still missing the whole point about pushing the weight.
Exactly. I mean, the whole idea is to take care of the person or persons. You're moving them. That's the goal. You're using this big old car that weighs 3,000 or 4,000 pounds to move 300 pounds. It just doesn't make sense. 90% or more of the energy is used to move the vehicle rather than the primary goal of moving the people. That was my whole premises. Moving the people, cut down, get it back to where it's more moving just them with a shield over them, protects them from the weather and other cars, and gives them an environment to move in. That's a car.
So somebody watching this inspired by this crazy old country boy's idea and his actions, and they think, that all makes sense. I think I might try to see what I can do. What would you say to them?
Tell them it's too late. There's another option. I haven't told anyone this one yet, but I'll tell you. There's another little equation in energy efficiency, and that is, what's the most efficient way to get from A to B? That's a straight line. So you need a car that flies. You need a car that's made like a Frisbee. And boom, you can do the lightweight, you can do the shape correctly, and that's what I think somebody's going to do next. It's time that it's too late to do a car that rides on the ground and redo all your industry for that. I think it's time to make a flying car. That's what someone should do now. It ain't gonna be me, I'm too old, but that's what somebody should do. Take the new lightweight metals, plastics that you can build out, anything out of it's literally indestructible. It goes from A to B with our GPS systems. It's real easy to program in. You don't need to learn how to drive or anything. Make it where if the engine dies, it floats to the ground just like a Frisbee, where it can't wreck it hardly. Assign everybody to whatever direction you're going. That's the height you go in. You have a diaphragm underneath that lets the air go in and out, just like the lens on your camera. You can do it. That's real simple. It's already been made. The technology's there. Put it together in a plastic vehicle. Go for it. Somebody needs to do that, and you win. And we all win. Because you'll get hundreds of miles to the gallon in reality, because you're going to save so much not having to go around and up and down and sit in traffic and stop, and it will ease our lives, not to mention the money you would save on roads and highways, etc. And wrecks, it'd be virtually out. You couldn't hardly have a wreck. That's the way, that's why I wouldn't bother building a car myself anymore. If I was going to do it, I'd build an air car. That's what I would do.
The question everyone always asks themselves, and I suspect I know the answer to it, but would you do it all over again?
If I was 25, yes. You bet. It was just one of the best days of my life. I got to do something I love doing. I got to meet wonderful people that were so helpful and so energetic about it. I could name out 10, 20 other people that I met along the way too. That, like for instance, one of them was the guy that designed the intermittent wiper for Ford Motor Company. I met the guy that actually designed that and made it. He was helpful in a lot of things, just telling you things. This Tony Bernard guy that was head of the Winter Manufacturing in New Jersey, he'd been head of many manufacturing plants and really helped me understand manufacturing and running a big shop. Just hundreds of people were just so helpful. I can't even explain it, so to speak. And that spurred me on. I slept in 8 cars for 5 years. That's all I thought about. And I loved it. But it was okay to try to do something else. I was young, I was adaptable. And I had plenty of opportunities to build things.
So you went into construction. So during your entire construction career, which followed your car design career, did you ever have the urge or the idea to do something as striking, as amazing as the vehicle you made?
Only the last few years, I've just spent a lot of time thinking about the air car, and I've designed it in my mind. But no, I want to move to the country. I want to buy my ranch and build me a house and live here in Bandera. And it took 30 years of working in Houston to afford that, where I could buy this place. And no, I'm happy as a lark. I get to go down to the Commissioner's Court and get my 3 minutes in whenever I want to. Now, I love my life. I love my wife. I love my family. I'm the luckiest guy in the world, John. I'm glad I did the car. Yeah, I'll do it again just because it was a great experience. I wish it would have worked, but if it had worked, then I might not have ever had this ranch. I might not have had my wife or my son. So everything turned out just fine.
So your son's starting his career, he's in his mid-20s, or?
No, he's 31 now.
What would you say to him about what he should do in his life? Or if he has questions about paths in life?
No, I tell him to follow what happens to you. You got to get out there and do something, and you don't tell them what will happen, but just be ready to go with what happens to you and take full advantage of it and put your heart and soul in it, and you will win. To succeed at anything you do, you got to put your heart and soul in it.
Kind of go hard or go home.
That's well said. That's right. Give it all you got. If it works, great. If it doesn't, then you wait for some other opportunity. It will come along. But you have to get out there and look around, be something, do something. You know, hey, you never know what the day may bring.
Well, even like that fella said 2,000 years ago, you do have to knock, and the door will be open.
That's
the door's just not going to open.
No, you have to get up out of the bed, get your shoes on, and go out there and see what you can do. Absolutely.